What if I told you that somewhere in Kansas there is a grave with no name on it, just two words burned into a piece of rotting wood? Unknown woman, 1,874. She is not the only one. In this video, you are going to meet women who were auctioned off in broad daylight on the streets of San Francisco. Girls married off at 12 under the law, with a signature, and no one said a word. Wives who worked 19 hours a day and were never paid a single cent for any of it. Children taken from their mothers by force and told their language, their name, their entire identity no longer belonged to them. These are not stories from some distant country. This happened here, on this soil. Within the last 150 years, and almost no history book has ever bothered to write it down. Today, we will. Truth 1. This is a story American history books almost never tell, and I believe you need to hear it. From 1850 through the early 20th century, thousands of young women from Guangdong Province, China, were brought to California. They came from families so poor that no other path remained. Some were sold by their own parents, not out of cruelty, but out of desperation. Harvests had failed. Fathers were sick. There were more children than the land could sustain. Some were deceived with promises of a fine marriage to a wealthy man in America. Some were simply taken in the night. When they arrived in San Francisco, they were brought to auction houses openly, in plain sight. Buyers looked them over the way a farmer examines livestock, checking their health, asking their age, placing bids. A young, able-bodied woman could sell for anywhere between $200 and $1,000, an enormous sum at the time. Once purchased, they were confined to rooms inside Chinatown tenement buildings, known as crib spaces, just large enough to fit a single bed and nothing more. Many had no idea what city they were in. They spoke no English. There was no one to call out to. The California authorities knew exactly what was happening. They knew the specific addresses. They knew the names of the people running the operations, and for decades, they did nothing. In 1895, a woman named Donaldina Cameron decided to do herself what the government refused to do. She memorized the layout of every building across Chinatown. She learned enough Cantonese to speak directly with the women she found inside. Then she began her raids, sometimes at midnight, sometimes alone, breaking down doors and leading women out into the open. The traffickers placed a bounty on her capture. Threatening letters arrived. She read them, set them aside, and went back to work. Over more than 40 years, Donaldina Cameron brought over 3,000 women and children out of Chinatown. The Chinese women she rescued called her by two Cantonese words: Lo Mo, beloved mother. No medal was ever awarded. No film was ever made about her. But those 3,000 people lived because she decided that silence was not a choice. Truth 2. I need you to look at this wedding photograph. The bride appears no older than 15. The groom standing beside her, perhaps 40, perhaps older. The photograph was taken in Texas in 1881, and by every legal standard of the time, this was a fully valid marriage. In the 19th century, the minimum legal marriage age across most Western states was 12, with parental consent, no exceptions. Not an uncommon occurrence society frowned upon. The law. Why did families agree? Some for economic reasons, one fewer mouth to feed in an already overcrowded household, or because the groom paid the bride's family a sum in exchange. Some out of fear, because a young woman still unmarried past 20 was considered a burden, a mark against the family's standing. and some because they genuinely believed it was the best thing for their daughter. Stability, someone to provide for her. Was the girl ever consulted? Sometimes, at least in form. Do you wish to marry Mr. Johnson, with her parents standing right beside her, watching? Do you wish to marry Mr. Peterson, when she already knew the family needed the rent paid the following week? What did that consent actually mean? Very little. Records kept by the Christian Women's Association of Kansas document the case of a 13-year-old girl given in marriage to a man of 52. A neighbor heard her weeping through the entire night before the wedding. They crossed paths the next morning. The neighbor said nothing, because it was a family matter, and the world kept turning as though nothing had happened. Truth 3. There is a form of compelled labor the law has never called by its proper name, because it takes place inside a home, and because the person carrying it out is called a wife. Listen to this journal entry. Sarah Orne Jewett, a settler woman in Kansas, wrote in 1879, "I woke at 4 in the morning. I went to sleep at 11 at night. In those 19 hours, I did not stop working for a single moment. I cooked 3 meals. I did the washing. I milked 4 cows. I sewed 2 sets of clothes for the children. I pulled weeds in the garden. I cleaned the house. I nursed a sick child. Tonight, my husband complained that supper was not to his liking. I said nothing. She said nothing. Not because she had nothing to say, but because she knew that saying it would change nothing." Under 19th century law, a wife's labor was not recognized as labor. No wages, no days off, no right of refusal. If a husband decided to bring his parents into the household, his wife was expected to care for them without being asked. If he took in seasonal workers, she was expected to cook for them without complaint. If he decided to sell the house and move elsewhere, she was expected to follow without question. Every significant decision in a woman's life was made by the men around her. And the most troubling part was not the cruel husbands. The most troubling part was the ordinary ones, decent men by the standards of their day who never once thought to ask their wives what they wanted, because the world around them had never taught them that it mattered. And the women had never been taught they had the right to ask. Truth 4. Look carefully at the children in this photograph. Military-style uniforms, hair shaved to the scalp, backs held rigidly straight. Not one of them is smiling. This is not a photograph of a prison. This is a photograph of a school, the Carlisle Indian Industrial School, Pennsylvania, 1880. And the story of the children in this image is one of the darkest chapters in American history. From 1879 onward, the United States government pursued an official policy toward indigenous children, summarized by Carlisle's founder, Richard Henry Pratt, in words that have since become part of the historical record: "Kill the Indian, save the man." In practice, for indigenous girls, this meant being separated from their mothers, sometimes by force, many of them only 5 or 6 years old, and transported to schools hundreds of miles from home. On the first day, their hair was cut. Their traditional clothing was taken and burned. Their names were replaced with English ones: Sarah, Mary, Elizabeth. Their real names were gone. Someone else's name was placed on them. At these schools, speaking even a single word of their mother tongue was forbidden and punished. Punishments documented in school records included kneeling on concrete floors for hours, withholding of meals, and physical discipline. Years later, when those girls returned to their home villages, they could no longer speak their parents' language. They had lost the ceremonies. They had lost the songs. They belonged neither to the world inside the school fence, nor to the world where they were born, caught between two worlds, at home in neither. Many never returned at all. They died inside the school. In 2021, Canada uncovered more than 1,000 unmarked burial sites on the grounds of similar institutions. In the United States, investigations are still ongoing. This program continued until 1978. This is not distant history. People alive today lived through this as children. Truth 5. The history of the California gold rush has always been told from the perspective of men, bold prospectors, daring figures who staked everything on a single attempt. But there was an enormous workforce cut entirely from that telling. Women and not women in any romanticized role. At the California mining camps, women took on the work nobody wanted to do and nobody wanted to acknowledge. Washing miners' clothes in water cold as ice, from before dawn until well after dark, hands cracked and bleeding. Cooking for dozens, sometimes hundreds, in makeshift kitchens with scarce and unreliable supplies. Caring for the sick with no medicine and no equipment, relying only on knowledge passed down through generations and the work of their own hands. Most of these women were miners' wives. They had not come because they chose to be there. They came because they could not allow their husbands to disappear alone into a territory without law. They left behind homes in Ohio, in Massachusetts, in Virginia, left behind aging mothers, close friends, familiar gardens, to live in canvas tents on the mud-soaked ground under the California rain, and to work without stopping, without any other option. Louisa Clapp, who wrote under the pen name Dame Shirley, was one of the very few women in the gold camps to leave a written record. In a letter to her sister in 1851, she wrote plainly, "I came here because John wanted to come. I have hated this place from the very first day. The mud, the noise. There is nothing here that belongs to a woman's world. But I cook, I wash, I smile when smiling is required, because that is what a wife is supposed to do. Not because she wanted to, because that is what the world told her to do." Truth 6. Until now, I have told you about women who were held in place. Now I want to tell you about the women who dared to walk away, and what the world did to them for it. Bethania Owens Adair filed for divorce in 1859, at a time when doing so was nearly synonymous with social ruin for a woman. Her family turned away from her. Neighbors stopped inviting her into their homes. Someone in town said to her face, "You destroyed your own marriage. You deserve what follows." And what followed was this: no one would employ her, no one would rent her a room, no school would accept her son. She was forced to leave her child in her parents' care, then rebuild her life from nothing, taking in laundry and sewing, saving every coin she earned. But she did not stop there. She enrolled in medical school. During her anatomy lectures, the male students formally demanded she wait outside for the dissection sessions, arguing that such things were not appropriate for a woman to witness. The professor put it to a vote. Who wants Miss Owens Adair to leave the room? The majority raised their hands. Bethania remained in her seat and said, "I came here to learn. I will not leave." No one could make her go. She graduated. She practiced medicine. She became one of the strongest advocates for women's rights in the state of Oregon. The price of that freedom was years of loneliness, poverty, and living under the contempt of a society that had not yet found it in itself to forgive her. She knew the price before she paid it, and she paid it without regret. Truth 7. I have told you about women who escaped Bethania, Donaldina, Clara Brown. Names we know because their stories were large enough that history could not entirely erase them. But now I want to speak about the women who left nothing of the kind behind. In a small roadside cemetery in Kansas, there is a wooden grave marker nearly rotted through. Someone carved 5 words into it before it fell to decay. Unknown woman, 1874. No surname, no given name, no year of birth. Nothing but the year she died, and 2 words confirming that the person in the ground was a woman. No one knows where she came from. No one recorded how she lived. No document explains how she died. Across cemeteries scattered through the western states, there are hundreds of markers like hers. Some women died in childbirth, with no one beside them. Some died of illness while their husbands were away. Some died by acts of harm that no one investigated. And some died simply because they had worked for too long, under too much weight, with no one to share the load and no one to ask whether they were all right. I tell these stories not to fill you with anger. I tell them because those women built this country with their own hands and were never once recognized for what they gave. Every town standing today on what was once frontier land was built on foundations those women laid, through labor without pause and endurance without a finish line. No statue was ever raised for them. No road was ever named in their memory. But the ground beneath our feet carries what they left behind. And that is why we have to tell this story, so that the rotting wooden markers are not the only thing that remains of them. Truth 8. I want you to look at this advertisement. This is a promotional document issued by the Union Pacific Railroad Company in 1872. At the center of the page, an illustration of a beautiful young woman standing before a clean wooden house, surrounded by fat hens and a garden full of green. The text printed beside that image read, "Fertile land awaits you. A happy family is yours to build. Beautiful women are waiting for hard-working men." Women were used as the invitation. The image of a woman was placed alongside images of rich soil and abundant harvests, as though they were the same category of thing. Both resources, both waiting to be claimed. Railroad companies, land developers, and the federal government all used this approach. They funded the transport of women to newly settled territories, not out of any concern for those women, but because the presence of women kept men from leaving. A man on his own might walk away after one hard season. A man with a wife and children was far less likely to abandon the land. In that equation, women were the anchor. No one asked whether they wanted to be. Ida Pfeiffer, an Austrian explorer who traveled through California in 1853, recorded what she observed. People here speak of women in only 2 ways, with an exaggerated respect that rings false, or as objects with a practical value. There is nothing in between. No one simply sees them as human beings.
Truth 9. John Harmon died in 1878 in Nebraska, leaving behind 320 acres of land and a 3-room timber house. He had a wife and 4 children, 3 sons and 1 daughter. The will was read aloud in the lawyer's office. The land was divided equally among the 3 sons. The wife was granted the right to remain in the house until her death, but she could not sell it, could not mortgage it, could not make a single decision about it. The daughter was not mentioned in the will at all. This was entirely lawful. This was the standard inheritance structure across most Western states in the 19th century. Property passed through the male line. A wife did not inherit. She was granted temporary use. A daughter did not inherit land because she was considered to become part of her husband's family upon marriage, and therefore part of his family's assets. What did that mean in practice? It meant that a woman who had worked alongside her husband for 20 years to build that land, who had plowed beside him, harvested beside him, given birth and raised children on that ground, held no legal claim to any of it. If the eldest son decided to sell the land and move away, she had no say. If a son wanted her gone from the house, the law in many states offered her little protection. A woman named Helen Moore in Kansas wrote to her sister after her husband died in 1882, "I have been here for 23 years. I planted every tree in this garden. I swept every floorboard in this house thousands of times over. And today someone read me a piece of paper that says this house does not belong to me. It belongs to Thomas, a 19-year-old boy who has never turned a single furrow of earth." She had no right of appeal. That was the law. And that law did not change in many states until the very end of the 19th century. Truth 10. This is something that appears in almost no history book about the American West, but it happened inside thousands of homes. In a settler community on the plains, when a traveler stopped at your door and asked for water, you did not turn him away. Not because the law required it, but because of an unwritten rule that held the community together. Travelers were welcomed, the hungry were fed, the sick were nursed. That was the moral code of the prairie, and it carried more weight than most written laws. But the person who kept that code inside each home, it was not the husband out working in the fields, it was the wife. She cooked the extra portion. She prepared the sleeping space. She sat up through the night, tending to a sick stranger, while her husband and children slept. No one asked whether she was willing. Some women recorded that during winter months, their homes saw a near constant stream of unfamiliar faces. Hunters who had lost their way, injured traders, families with nowhere to sleep. A woman named Rachel Foster wrote in her diary in 1871, "This month I have cooked for 27 different people outside my own family. Not one of them paid. Not one of them asked my name. My husband says it is what the Lord requires. I do not argue. But tonight, after everyone has gone to sleep, I am sitting alone in the dark kitchen and asking myself, does the Lord know my name? Does the Lord know my name?" That question was written down at midnight in an unlit kitchen by a woman who had no way of knowing whether anyone else was asking the same thing in the dark. The answer history gives us: no one knew her name. No one recorded it. No one, except herself, in the diary her family kept, and that a researcher found 120 years later.
We started this with a name no one carved, Unknown Woman, 1874. And now, after everything I've just told you, I hope that marker means something different to you than it did 30 minutes ago. Because she wasn't just a woman who disappeared. She was someone who woke before dawn and kept a fire going so that the people around her could survive another day. She didn't get a statue. She didn't get a street named after her. She didn't even get a name on her own grave. But she got something the world couldn't take away. She got us sitting here saying, "We see you. We know you were here, and we are not going to look away." If this story moved you, share it with one person who needs to hear it. Not for the numbers, for her.